going to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on member engagement, brought to you by the Member Services Committee. My name is Ann Russo. Your presenter today is going to be Arlene Stewart, and the chair of the Member Services Committee, Mike Savage, is going to be helping answer questions in the chat and in the Q&A. And just a little housekeeping before we get started. This is a webinar. You can hear us, but we cannot hear you yet. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box of your Zoom control panel. We should have time for questions at the end, and we will unmute your phones at that time. The session is being recorded, and we hope to have it available and on the website later this week. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, Arlene Stewart.
Hey, everybody. Thanks. Hey, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. We're happy to have y'all here. Mike, this is the second one of our series in Chapter Leaders webinar, right?
That's correct.
Wonderful. So we really do want to hear your comments. Make sure you know how to, tap that chat box, and let's move on. So the first thing we're going to do is start with some engagement, since it's all about engagement. And we want to know who you are. It's important for us to know who we're talking to so that we understand, have an idea of what your skill sets are, what your interests might be. So we're going to give you here a minute. And I believe that we have had a typo here. It's not that you are a cheater officer, but a chapter officer.
Sorry.
That's okay. I want, at some point, I want to, see a raise of hands to know how many people caught that and how many people laughed. Because laughter is a really important part of this. How we doing, Ann? Oh, we've got a great split right now. And folks that are not a chapter officer at this point, we'll have to think about this in next time we do this, Mike, to find out if we can ask them to type, are they a past president or a past leader, or are they thinking about becoming a leader? Thanks a lot. So it's important to know who we are. And we have this idea as chapter leaders, that we want to increase our membership, because I think too often we feel like this is what our chapter events or chapter meetings look like, that there's a few stalwarts hanging around, and we've got a lot of folks that maybe are on the rolls, or people that we've crossed paths with and are doing business, and we say, we think you really would enjoy this. Why aren't you a member? And you get a whole lot of excuses and whatnot. So we really want to take a look and change it to something that looks like this, where we've got a lot of folks in the room. We have a lot of, we have people that are engaged. We have people that are relaxed. So my approach with this is, how do you break it down? What do you need to be thinking about in order to go from this to this? What are the steps? And do we ever really think about those steps? So the first thing that is typically thought about is, how do we get our members to the meeting? And the first question is, do we know what our members want? Do we know who they are? Do we really have a sense of who they are? And I believe we have a question about why are your members members? If you could bring that up. So we're gonna, it's a real simple yes or no, and pick what you think. And Ann, I'm trusting you to change this when you think we got people, we've got everything in. Great. That is a far higher percentage than I expected. So that's a real important thing, because that's the very first place to start. Okay, let's see where I'm going here. Because if we want to get started, we really have to start at the beginning. And it's been my experience that very few organizations think about why they want new members or who those members are. A lot of folks think about they want more money, that they want to have an increased budget, and that they can do more things. But the question is, what things can they do? Is that effectively communicated? Do the people in their organization know what leadership wants to do? Do they know why their membership dollars are important and why their participation is important when it comes to increasing that budget? Well, the government's documents may say something, and that those are clearly defined. But is there anything that is truly tangible? Before I came into codes, I was in the world of theater. And one of the most important lessons I ever learned, that has carried me through on everything, was trying to an acting professor trying to explain to his students about how to communicate emotion. And he explained that you really want to look at something that is tangible. Can you hold it in your hand? Because not everybody can think abstractly. And if you have something that is tangible, everyone can move toward it. People can see what they can do to move that goal forward. So beyond that, what are the other reasons that your organization wants to grow? Does your whole board of directors or your executive board, are they all on the same page? We take it for granted, but we're not, until we actually ask this, we don't know. And how do they fit together with governance documents? Now, this is not intended in any way, shape, or form to be a difficult or long drawn out process. This is intended to be a lot more simple. So, Anne, if you could put up the poll question about the meeting dedicated to membership growth, please. And I'm going to ask everybody's pardon. I had switched out this title slide, but apparently I didn't do it well enough. So that's also telling, because we think we had a vast number of folks on this online say that they know what their membership wants, but they haven't had a discussion about how to fulfill that requirement, how to actually make that a reality. Okay, let's keep going here. So that's why it's important to find out how these things match. And if you take a look at who does show up, do we know that what we think our members want is actually what those that show up want? And hopefully we can reach out to some of the folks that don't show up to also ask why they don't. So this is called a gap analysis. And it's what I started to say about not being a complex process. We've all been part of those incredibly tedious sessions about how to do a visioning statement. That's what this is not intended to do. This is intended to actually give us an idea of where our strengths and weaknesses are. I'm going to ask Mike right now if anybody's got I see a 1 in the chat. Mike, do we have any questions?
That one was me putting a note in the chat that's where they post them. Right now, there's no questions.
Okay, then we're going to keep going. So we want to know what our resources are. Now, again, we moved some of these around, so I want to make sure that we've got everything set up where it needs to be. We already did. So we already talked about who's in chapter leadership. And the first place to look in terms of participation is your board of directors participating? And if so, how? Because if they're not coming to meetings, why would anybody else? Now, sometimes meetings aren't being held at a time when a leader is available. Maybe they can't get out of a heavy workload. Maybe they just aren't available at that time. So if the leadership who has a reason to be there and a commitment to be there can't, and it's more than just an oddball, one here, one there, then you wind up needing to check to find out, is this really the time and the place to hold a meeting or to have the type of meeting? Because if they can't get there, can anybody else? The other question I thought of, well, do your members know that there are events going on? Has anybody actually checked what are your communication avenues? What percentage responds to which avenue? Do they respond to phone? Do they respond to email? Do they respond to text? Because if they don't know, they also can't show up. So when we talk about increasing attendance, increasing engagement, the easiest business to expand is existing business, the people that are already on your rolls. So for me, the very first thing that I think about is making sure that we are reaching those people that are already together. Let me make sure I've got a question here. So that's what we want to know, is how do your members communicate with each other? That's also interesting. We've got 5 out of 8 that talk at the chapter meetings. In one case, it's a social function, and twice it's email. Well, if folks don't know that there's a chapter meeting, they can't talk at a chapter meeting. So the first thing to do is figure out what are your resources in order to expand communication. A common public relations metric is that it takes 5 to 7 hits for someone to actually realize that something is, remember a particular logo, action, event. Now, if your meetings are always the same time, you might want to make sure that you have consistent notifications of those meetings, and perhaps think about reaching out in a different way. If your chapter has some funds, is it possible to send out an email blast in addition to a text blast in addition to an email blast? Because then that becomes 2 different ways they hear about these. And by the time you get to the 3rd meeting, you're getting up into that 5 to 7 range that always happens at lunch on Wednesdays. So it starts sinking in. You also don't necessarily want to always send something out repeatedly on the same communication line, because then you wind up in spam. And nobody wants that. Okay, let's see what my next one is. Any questions?
None in the chat.
Okay, great. Okay, so the next question, when it comes to thinking about how do we turn this idea of member engagement into something tangible, how do we know what we're trying to do? Are we trying to get one person more at a meeting, one person more to work with a committee or show up at some kind of social event? Are we trying to get 300 people? Different people have different ideas. Do we want to have the same people? Do we want to have a different population of people? Do we want to work on a particular county or region? What defines success? So we've got several of them right now. And if you don't mind putting up membership, please, membership growth. And Mike, I think there was a question that popped in while we're waiting on this. Can people still hear me? Did I?
We still hear you. I think the
Sorry,
question was,
yeah, I was on mute. Sorry. It was a question about, is this where they posted the question? So I put yes, but I'm also responding in the panel, so I can monitor both sides of it.
Okay, so did we get the first poll question done? Okay, so here we run the gamut. And this percentage will change for everybody's for everyone's chapter. But if you want 25%, then you need to find out how many people you have in your chapter. And then you have something tangible. And you might want to assign X amount of people per board member. You may, let's go to the next slide. I'm sorry, not next slide, next poll. A different metric of success is meeting attendance. And remember, membership is different than meeting attendance, because in general, you have a bigger number of members than you do at meeting attendance. But once you have a number, then you could start breaking it down into how you're going to hit those targets. So that's pretty well split among all of our attendees about what that meeting attendance looks like. Okay, next one, and socials. Fantastic. When Ann and I put this together, we added the question, what is a chapter social? Because I belong to a number of organizations and we have socials all the time. However, I find that BOAF is a bit different because BOAF does have a sizable governmental group. And for a lot of folks, they come in and they come out, and if it's not on work time, then that's it. However, it's important, I think, especially what I've learned at the BOAF conference, that a lot of officials like to be able to blow off steam and like to be able to blow off steam around people in many ways that they could be safe with. As enforcement officials, you are different. And being able to have some time out with each other can be very rewarding. So it may very well be, when I thought about this, that by looking at some kind of maybe late afternoon get together, early morning get together, well, okay. I believe that there are a number of organizations that have early morning meetings. However, I also recognize that this group gets a lot of work done before everybody else is up. So it may very well be that something with a social component later on in the afternoon may work out better. Mike, are those the same left over, the chat and the QA there?
Yeah, so I'm going through them. One chat apparently is not working, so I'm monitoring the other.
Okay. And could you put up the next one? Okay. So many folks don't know what percentage doesn't renew. And that becomes a key point, because if you want to grow membership, you're always replacing the ones who left with the ones that are new, so you never grow anything. You're basically treading water. So you have to think about both groups, and both groups are different in the sense that one has already been convinced that membership in the organization is going to provide value, and the other one isn't. And if you're losing members, then they don't think that the money that they've spent on your organization is worth it. And not just that, but the time. So since we went to, when we started this, we said the overwhelming number of folks here said that they know why people are attending, but they don't know what the renewal rate is. And without knowing that, you can't know whether or not you're actually hitting those numbers and whether you're engaging people. Because these are all tactile ways of finding out if what you are currently doing is actually working. Because if it works, then maybe all you need to do is do more of it. But if it doesn't work, by looking at this information, it should lead you to a place to say, this is what we can change, and this is how, in order to engage more. Okay. Anne, what's the next poll question?
The only poll question we have left is for those that are going to conference about
Okay,
special
thank
seat.
you.
We've gone through all your.
That's the last one. Okay. So all of those things are about figuring out a metric for how to be successful. Because the first group that you want, I'm going to say this again, it can't be said too often. You want to start with making sure that the people that you have stay and how to engage them. And people love to be successful, but they won't even try to be successful if they don't know how they will be. So as a leader, you need to define the success of your organization. And in conjunction with that, what is the organizational personality that already exists? Is the group competitive? Are they apathetic? And another way of saying this is, were they voluntold to be there? That was supposed to be over apathetic. Sorry about that. Because there are so many folks in a government situation that get told to be somewhere. And they're told to do this, and they're told to do that, and they're told to do the other thing. And it becomes trying, in my view. It's a place to just take up space. So in engaging them, what don't they necessarily get in other parts of their job that will allow them to hang on and have some value? Another role for you as leader is deciding just how much of your action is an expansion of what you already have, or is it in some kind of completely new territory? And that was one of the things that we talked about at the BOAF board several years ago, and why there has been a focus on attracting permit techs to the organization, because they're the front of each building department, and they're do a lot in order to expand the time of the licensees. But I think at the time we only had about 4 permit techs. And now, Anne, correct me if I'm wrong, they are the quickest growing segment of the organization.
Yes, that's correct.
And then you also want to think about what is the priority among all of these. And that also would be different group to group. Because if somebody has a real burning desire to go after one group, then let them lead. If it is really easy to get to another group, no matter how much passion somebody else has, if one group or one event is a lot easy to do, there is no reason not to be looking at the low-hanging fruit. Because it's a very cluttered place out in the world. And everybody wants their thing to be what we go after, or they think that their thing is what is going to be the cat's meow, going to solve the problem. And as a group, you really need to think about how are you going to rank and prioritize these. If you don't get one right away, then you can work on resources to get the next one. So what's next? What happens when you get to the crossroads? Once you know who your target is, where do you find them and how do you engage them? Which way do you go on the yellow brick road? Well, the thing that everybody likes is food. Food, glorious food. Everybody comes out for a good meal. That tends to be true for every place. So this tends not to be you can't go wrong with food, whether it's in a luncheon or in a breakfast or in a social. And if you want to switch things up, as I said earlier, what do you want to do with the funds that you have collected? Is it worthwhile, in order to engage your group further, to think about a different kind of a food experience that may say, I really want to go to that. And it's entirely possible at that point, somebody who's been around for a while may say, we've never done this. You want to come with me? The other tried and true thing is the training sessions. Whether it's with BOAF, because I knew very well if I put anything other than BOAF here, Anne was going to shoot me. And I hope everybody's laughing at that. I can't tell if anybody's raising their hand about it. Do they have a raised hand option here? I don't know.
There is no laugh emoji that we can send you, but I laughed, Arlene. I did laugh.
Okay, good. This is a little bit different than having a meeting. I'm used to having meetings, doing webinars, a little bit different here. So you have to forgive me, folks out there. I know Ron is out there, muttering something incredibly funny under his breath. But, doing a training session at lunch, anybody who's trying to hold on to or obtain an ICC license, the training requirements, the CE requirements are so much greater than anything in Florida. So that definitely, I'm sure, is one of the things that people come to BOAF about. And likewise, if we're talking about expanding populations, everybody's always thinking about, well, who's got a CE credit of a particular product to come talk to us about what we really like. And even though we have people that come in from industry to give us a CE credit, how often do you ask them to stay? How often do you ask them to participate? How often do you ask them to stick around and get to know the people that they want to know even better? Now I see 3 questions. QAs, Mike, what do you got?
Oh, no, they're just making fun of you. That's all.
Okay, I got to read that later.
No, actually, they're very, it's just chiming in about support from BOAF, how good it is.
Good. So because I was expecting this to be more like a webinar, I'm going to save this question for last, because I had intended to have this be a little bit more of a give and take about what are some examples that you thought worked well when it came to interesting meetings or interesting engagements.
Arlene, we can open that up whenever you're ready. We can make it available for the attendees to speak up if you'd like, whenever you're ready.
I think we're almost at the end, so I'm just going to ask people just to hold that onto that, and we'll come back to it. So once you do get everybody in the room, what are some tangible engagement ideas? Because people need to feel belonged. And they can't feel belonging if they don't belong. And so many people are anxious to walk into a room where they don't know anyone. And that is certainly one way that you can, as board members, that you can encourage people to come, that you can say that there is always going to be one board member at the front of the room by the sign-in sheet to welcome the new members. This might be a great place to encourage your product manufacturers whose entire reason for coming to you is to get to know the enforcement industry. So, Ann and I kind of were bouncing this around about that there are people that come in rooms and they've recognized faces for years, but they don't know who they are. And I hate to tell you, I know for me, I'm introducing myself to people 3 and 4 times these days because I have hit that CRS stage of my life. And I hate name badges. But one of the things Ann came up with was passing out a piece of paper and a Sharpie, folding it in half long ways and putting your name in front of it. Very, very, you can't see because your background's there. You got a
All right,
virtual
I'll turn it
background.
off. I'll turn it off. Let's see if I can figure out how to do that.
That's okay. We'll get there later. There's also the tried and true, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. And there's also pick somebody you don't know and talk to them for a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting. It has been my experience that people who come to BOAF meetings and people who are enforcement officials hate any and all of these things, in spite of how incredibly effective they are. So my suggestion is you poll the group and you say, pick one. And if nobody picks, you're pulling it out of a hat, because then I bet you dollars to donuts, somebody's going to speak up about something. And, maybe you give them a prize for being the one who speaks up, or if it's at, you might want to give some time in the beginning of a meeting and say who collects the most cards gets a door prize. Something so that people know who each other is.
Arlene, this is card stock. It's not expensive. And what you can do, just have a stack of this at the room with a marker and tell people to write their name on the front and the back large enough so that people around the room can see it. So if it's in front of me, my name's on both sides. If you're behind me and I'm talking, you can see my name. If you're in front of me and you turn around and look, you can see my name. It's cheap. And, a lot of people have been on noisy job sites for many, many years. And if you're going around the room introducing, you just saying your name, a lot of people might not hear that. And so this is just a good, when they're at the tables where they're sitting, this is just a good visual to learn other people's names. So cheap.
You guys may notice that we have the closed caption on here. And I think this might be one of the first, if not the first webinar that we've done with a closed caption. And I know for me, I'm always want closed captioning on whether or not I've got my hearing aid in or not. So as a leader, what can you do to foster this engagement? And I think this would be part of your gap assessment, because different people have different strengths. If anybody truly knows me, and I don't know who signed up, but I'm a bull in a china shop. I'm not happy unless I know everybody in the room. Well, there are other people who don't want anybody to know who they are. They want to come in and check everything out, and then they will choose who they talk to. And I bet you that you've got one of both of them on your board, and you have so many other folks that interface and communicate in different ways. So when you as a board have a meeting to say, how are we going to be deliberate in going through and increasing our engagement functions, in our engagement activities, who is comfortable doing what? Because that might be who you need to keep an eye open for people who might pair well, people who have similar needs, who have similar questions, of similar ages. And you facilitate that introduction so that those people don't feel so alone, and they don't feel like they're the ones, they have to do it all by themselves. They have been enveloped and they feel welcome. And that's really the first step in engaging that member, because then somebody else may understand what they're about, and you can listen to what they're talking about and then get ideas for what your next steps are. Carefully approach those people who seem reluctant, because it may very well be that they don't know how to break the ice, and they're just waiting for somebody to talk to them. When it comes to your board, be willing to switch up your positions. There's a lot of bylaws that say that people can only have a position for 2 terms. So by the time you're in your second term, you might want to start thinking about who you want to succeed you, or where you want to be next, and start thinking about what kind of information do you need to be sent, what kind of information do you need to be passing along, and perhaps your experience, where is that taking you next? For those who are president, how does that make you, how does that turn you into some kind of a mentor or an ombudsman? How do you pass along that information, that personality of your organization, and foster it among the folks that are younger, that are coming up? And it's all a matter of trying to get out of a rut, because what we're really talking about here is different ways of, again, engagement. Let me make sure I got this on that's my next slide. Many hands make light work. So there can be a place for everyone. If you're stuck in a rut, there's nowhere to move. You're stuck in the very same line for miles and miles and miles and miles. But when you get out of that, you're able to foster some two-way communication. So that's part of the reason why I'm suggesting that you have a board meeting on Zoom, over lunch, something where you can do some kind of a gap analysis and just get some information down on paper, figure out where you want to go. Do you need a committee? How involved are the existing positions? How involved are the positions that could be created to help you get to where you want to be? And then think about how you could have a light assignment, a medium assignment, and a heavy assignment, because everybody has a life. For me, with co-development, I try and make sure that for our committee, I try and get 2 hours over a week when it comes to reviewing code proposals. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen. but it all depends on the ICC schedule, and I don't really know. And there are times that people get through things very quickly and they say, do you need more help? And there are people that come and say, this is too much, I can't do it all. And you say, okay. But when you have a light assignment, people are more likely to say yes, because you're not trapping them. And that's what volunteer organizations have to fight against constantly, is this idea that if they say yes, they are in that position for life. No. And you can tell them up front, once you do this work, we have been very careful in how we do this. And we know that people have different kinds of commitment. For me, with code development, I don't need everybody to make a meeting, but I do need everybody to do their proposals. And when people have kids, when people have parents, they aren't always able to get to something live. That doesn't mean that they still don't want to participate. They still don't want to know what's going on. So that gap analysis gives you an opportunity to figure out and brainstorm, how can you interface with different folks? Is it by text? Is it, with a newsletter? Because people join to be involved. And if you want to do a newsletter, you can you could say, we want to do a newsletter, but we don't have somebody who can do a newsletter. And then you might want to advertise that this is what we want to do. These are the skills. Does anybody have them? And it's entirely possible somebody's going to raise their hand and say, yes, but I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. And it's entirely possible somebody's going to say, neither do I, we're going to wing it. And then everybody's under the tent together. People also join because they want to find out things, and that's why I brought up the newsletter. What's going on with education? What are some of the questions that are happening around the state or in the area, and what's everybody else doing? What's happening with legislative updates? How do we interface with the state in order to get that information and bring it back to the local? We already went over vendor invites. Say thank you. Whether you're giving somebody kudos in a meeting, sending them a note, giving them an end of year award, maybe dropping a note to their boss to say how valuable they are. If they do something that can be bragged on, send a letter to the paper with a picture, maybe they'll run it. And best of all, cold hard cash is never bad. And usually it has to be in a gift certificate. And these are all things that can be done. Some of these can certainly be done inexpensively. The gift certificate, what are you going to do with your dues? But make sure you know this. A thank you is different than a compliment. And I'm going to ask that in just a minute. What's the difference? And most importantly, life is a journey, so laugh as frequently as you can, because none of us have the answer for everything, and we learn from each other. And a lot of those lessons are really, really funny. So, Anne, can we open it up?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to open this. Go ahead.
I'm clicking this button, allowed to talk. A lot of people have their mute buttons pressed. I can see that. So if someone would like to join in on the conversation, you're welcome to do that. And while I'm clicking, and I'll just add my 2 cents in here. I'm a member of the Florida Society of Association Executives, which is part of the American Society of Association Executives. And their members are people like me, staff who work for associations, and they have done extensive studies on the reason to join membership and also the reason to volunteer. And by far, the top reasons why someone joins an association is for networking opportunities and for educational opportunities. So if you're getting your people together, you're meeting one of those needs. And then if you're getting someone in for your meeting to do a CE session, and I know sometimes you can get someone in to do educational content that doesn't have CEs, both of those, you're doing what you're fulfilling your mission there as being an association. And one other thing, for volunteering, you have to put the right people on the bus, and then you have to get the right people in the right seats. Not everyone is going to be on the welcoming committee. Not everyone wants to do that. But you find the people that best, volunteer positions that they best fit in, and then make their volunteer work meaningful. Let them know that they are appreciated and what they're doing does make a difference, and they'll keep coming back. Now, I have unmuted, I have clicked the button for everyone. So I think if you want to talk now, you can. So
I wanted to make a point of and ask folks, what is the difference between a thank you and a compliment?
A compliment gives and a thank you receives.
tell
Okay,
us who's talking and what chapter you're from.
This is Rick Brumby. I'm in Central Florida. And how you doing, Miss Ann?
Good, how are you?
Good.
anybody else?
Stephen Whitmore, Osceola County.
What are your thoughts on this?
Sounds like we need to start doing everything like they do at church. Greet them at the door, shake their
Oh.
hands.
Actually, what I was asking about is how is a compliment different than a thank you?
You might have to tell us, Arlene.
Okay. So a thank you can be given, is a lot like a participation, is a lot like a participation award. No matter how much or how little.
We lost Arlene.
Oh, Arlene, you froze. All right.
She leaned back in her chair.
Gives them it's a way to acknowledge that what they've done is special. So, we live in an age where everybody gets a participation award, as opposed to coming in first, second, or third. Well, there's a place for both, because someone may not have been able to do as much preparation, maybe they're not as far along in their career to be able to have gotten special recognition for a job well done. But everybody who shows up can be recognized, because with what we do, oftentimes just showing up is half the battle. So don't forget to give both. One is not a substitute for the other. Okay, I want to go back here. We'll open the floor to thoughts. Did you have any questions? Were any of these different? Were there any surprises? Did you want to see me blonde with a clown nose on or something? Big red afro. I'll take that too. But what are your thoughts?
This is
Was there
Rich. this is very eye-opening as to how little I know about my own organization. I've got a page full of notes here.
Good, we did it good for one person. Yay!
And your chapter, the Central Florida chapter, does a very big event in the spring every year. Could you just spend 30 seconds, 60 seconds telling us about that and what kind what kind of turnout you get?
That's the BOF picnic, and it's this year's event was very well attended. But as Arlene said earlier, it was all about the food. The steak was serious. We have some major grill meisters that just love getting behind the grill. We had Ishmael Castro, I guess, is going to be the new is it president? I think he may be the new president. I'm not sure, but we're already planning next year's event and getting things organized for that. We want to make next year bigger than this year, and also more inclusive of families. Instead of just a bunch of old codgers showing up with dragging their wives with them, and just get more people involved and sell it basically.
And I think, you bring up a good point. I didn't say it specifically, but when I talk about different populations, we've got two distinct populations in our profession. We have got folks that are very, very comfortable with paper and telephones, and then we've got a much younger group that is starting to grow up in and come over from the trades that get all of their news via Instagram. So what does that mean? That's a different population, and how do you engage with? And I think a lot of us are still having those challenges. And that might be something, Mike, that we might want to think about for a future group, a future session, is how do we engage with millennials and Gen X or Gen Z? If anybody, does that sound like something we might want to tackle?
I do have a survey that's going to pop up when you exit out of this webinar where you can officially tell us that too, but.
Anybody else got any thoughts? There's names here that I'm unfamiliar with. So,
Hi, Ashley on here. I'm currently
Hey, Ashley.
serving the president of Central Florida chapter. Rich, we are going to bring you up to speed. And for next year's picnic, I would like to see Anne, Arlene, Mike Savage again to join us. It's going to be a much bigger, better event next year. That's all I can say. Thank you.
I'll be there.
Are there other people on the phone do you have socials? Central Florida, because I live here in Central Florida. I've been to their picnic and I know it's great. I think Palm Beach County do they do a deep sea fishing? What are some other ways that you get people to come out and have fun?
Oh, by the way, we have a golf tournament in December. I would like to see much bigger participation also. That's our fundraising. Put mark your calendar, please. Thank you.
You fund your scholarships with the golf tournament, right? I think you fund.
Yes. Yes.
So are other chapters doing things like that?
This is Terry Sullivan from South Pasadena. Suncoast does a holiday party every year. So it's right after the holidays, usually like mid-January. And it's a social event, and that's when they have their board meetings and all that for the final. That's the only one I know of that they do. So
I saw the pictures for that, and that really surprised me. It surprised me the type of banquet it was and how well it was attended, because I don't usually think about building department, building BOAF chapters getting dressed up in
Yes,
Careful,
it's
The
Arlene,
country
careful.
club.
yeah.
And
Go
it was a
I
nice
was really
event. They had
sorry.
a full band and dinner in a bar, and it was very nice. But they don't do much during the
Else?
year other than web stuff. So it's been challenging to get to meet people. So you go to an event like that and then you don't know half the people there because you haven't met them because you've been doing Zoom meetings.
So does anybody else have that kind of challenge? Especially post-COVID?
You know, I'll tell you, it was, I think 2 years ago at conference, there were two people standing near the coffee display, just a few feet apart. And I said, hey, do you know this person? And they said, no. And I said, oh, well, here, let me introduce you. And I started thinking about that. And I have found more often than not, the people that we're assuming know everyone does not. And so I have been, like Arlene said earlier, I've been introducing people more than once. And I don't want anyone to leave a BOAF event without a new contact. I'll share with you, quite a while ago, I went to a chapter meeting, and the people, I said, does everyone here know everyone? And they said, well, no, I recognize them by face. I said, oh, okay, you're going to meet someone new today. You're going to grow your network today. I said, please get up and walk 3 steps away from where you are and introduce yourself to someone you don't know. That's important. If I had a room of 40 people, and if we were going to spend time either going around the room and introducing everyone to the room, I wouldn't do that. I would say, go move and go and move. And for the next 2 minutes, talk to someone, and then move again and talk to someone else. You might spend 10, 15 minutes doing that, but especially in the large groups, but you're going to walk away with 2 new contacts. And, you know, small chapter meetings, those that maybe only a dozen or so show up, you know, you have time. You call an audible how you want to manage your icebreaker or however. I'll mention, I know another chapter, I think it's Peace River. They do a raffle, not a raffle. So I guess is it a raffle? It's a 50-50 ticket. At every chapter meeting, you get your raffle tickets and money, you pay your money and they split it. You walk away with some money and the rest of the cash goes into, I think, their scholarship fund. So there are lots of creative ways where we can engage and get some enthusiasm and then do something good, like have some scholarship money to give away later in the year. I know I've even had a chapter member one time, Arlene, they said, we have so much money in our account, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you should plan a party. And it can be a swanky, fancy dress party. It can be a family picnic. You could probably rent a bowling alley for less money than you think it's going to be to have your BOAF members and their families come. So just be creative and then tell us about it. I want to know. I want to see pictures.
So to practice what I preach, I'm gonna thank Mr. Ortiz and Mr. Stafford and Ms. Tank and Mr. Gideon for being here, because I do not recognize your I can't put a name to your face. I think I have met Mr. Ortiz before. I'm not sure if I've met.
Yes, you did, 100%. You came to the Keys and you talked to us for a couple of days.
That's
So,
well, if you remember,
Monroe County.
we were all mushed in that room, and we were all dying
Yes.
with that one fan.
Yep.
We will never forget being stuck with only one fan and dying air conditioning. And
Well, you know,
Arlene,
like, we overcompensated. Now it's very cold.
I'm
So,
deploying my question, Arlene, about special seating at the networking luncheon. This is Wednesday at conference. My thought was to spread the executive committee out and have chapter officers sit with the executive committee. So if you all are interested in that, let me know if you're going to be at conference, let me know on the survey. I just want to get people together and talking. No one.
yeah, and you know, one of the things that you know, and I don't know if we would have to check this out or if it would be an okay thing to do or not. But I think it would have to be anonymous and done in a way that was, you know, that wouldn't get anybody in trouble. But what about, you know, having some kind of an engagement where, you know, every 3 months you have a slideshow at your meeting where it says craziest things I've seen this quarter on the job sites. You know, everybody loves these things when they go flying around the web, but it's like, okay, what is the crazy thing that you've seen? You know, what is a story that's warmed your heart? You know, and you have to be present to win. One of the things that we do a 50-50 at the scholarship fund, for the scholarship fund on Wednesday at the BOAF meeting that, you know, Sam Gerace did that for years, and then Linda Patrick did it. And when I found out that Linda wasn't doing it anymore, it's like, okay, well, give me the raffle tickets, because it's been a tradition. You know, how do you bring in, do we know what our traditions are? Do people miss their traditions? Is there a way to find out what the tradition is, or to start a new tradition? You know, so maybe it's tradition, you know, maybe it's a tradition to figure that out.
Arlene, I'm also going to mention those going to conference on Wednesday. I can't remember if it's Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon. I think it's Wednesday morning. There is going to be a roundtable for chapter officers that will be, it's on the program, which is posted on the website, and it'll be on the app. Everybody who's going to conference is going to get the app email soon, and it won't have a CE. So, you know, but we are going to get chapter officers together in the same room to exchange these ideas and not reinvent the wheel.
So I'm going to usurp Mike's prerogative for a moment, but it's right now member services is me and Mike and Terry. So I'll invite any of you to join our committee. Or come back to our committee if you find that you need some additional assistance, or you'd like to, you know, hear about, you know, something that you're trying to get a grip on. You know, if we get enough people to ask about it, you know, maybe we can find, if we don't have internal expertise, maybe we can look for external expertise. Mike, I want to turn this over to you as chair of the committee to you know, say anything else that you might want to, in terms of, you know, add any other points that we've talked about, or, you know, let these kind folks know about your vision about what's coming up.
Yeah, thanks, Arlene. Yeah, no, I think I didn't really have anything else to add. I think it actually went very well. Definitely interesting having more people join the committee. A lot of ideas will go a long way in helping us reach out to people and make sure we're bringing items that the membership wants to see, because if you guys don't want to see it, nobody's ever going to attend it. So that's the biggest thing, is to make sure, one, that we're serving the membership, and two, that we make sure it's something you guys are very interested in, so we can not only get you here, but have you invite other people to show up. Parliamentary procedures, engaging membership, all those things have been very well received and attended. But we want to keep building on that. So definitely interested in the Gen Xer thing, and the millennials. I'm a little older than them. I'll have to reach out and figure out how to engage those guys. But definitely things that we can work on together as a committee, and definitely have input from the membership, because that's what we're here for. I don't really have anything besides that. I think we're a little over time. Hopefully we kept a lot of people. And
Well,
did you have
everybody
anything?
here knows that I could keep talking and keep talking and keep talking. I had no idea how long I was going, so sorry about that. And
No,
I'm actually kind of surprised that we kept as many folks as we did over time. So thank you guys for staying.
There's a question in the chat. Let's see. Oh, Steve Whitmore, I have to go.
So there is going to be a brief survey when you exit out of this webinar. So please complete it so we can bring you more exciting content. And the committee's pretty much on track to deliver one of these webinars about once a quarter. And I'm looking forward to seeing those that are coming to conference, 25 days, and we'll all be together. And today's session will be recorded. It's recorded, and I'll try to have it up on the website next week. So thank you, Arlene. Thank you, Mike. And thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you, Terry, who worked on the behind the scenes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.